Hi, I'm Mark, this is Mark's Tech Vlogs, and today I'm going to bring you guys a comparison video talking about the differences between the Nuki 4th generation smart locks and the new Switchbot Lock Pro. Now, a lot of the things I'm going to talk about in this video will also apply if you're talking about the Nuki 3rd generation smart locks. That's with the exception of Matter support. It's also worth saying that whilst Nuki have the 4th generation and 4th generation Pro models, pretty much the only difference between the two is that you have Wi-Fi built into the Pro. Now, I also want to say at the start of this video that if you are looking for in-depth reviews of each of these smart locks, they are also available on this channel. This video is just going to go over some of the core functionality and the differences and hopefully help you decide which one is right for you. And let's start off by talking about compatibility. And really that's the reason I'm making this video, because these two smart locks are very similar in terms of the different doors they're compatible with. That includes UK multi-point doors with the lift to lock handle. And essentially both of these locks work for kind of slightly more niche cases. So that is the UK multi-point doors with a lift to lock handle, but also doors with night latches. That means if you've got a door like my front door, where to get in from the outside, even when it is unlocked, you still need to put the key in and give it an extra turn, both of these smart locks are compatible. And this is what makes these two smart locks in particular great for UK users, because most of our doors have those lift to lock handles, and it's quite common to have that night latch functionality, and not many retrofit smart locks are compatible with those things. And so it's great to have another one in the form of a Switchbot Lock Pro join that lineup, especially at the price point. So let's talk about prices. So the Nuki starts at £149 for the 4th generation model. Or if you want the Pro model, it's £250, and that includes a reusable battery pack and Wi-Fi built in. The Switchbot Lock Pro retails at £139, but there's quite often 10% off voucher codes available, including one I've got below. That means it will come down to about £124. For the Switchbot one, you're also going to need either a Hub Mini with Matter support or the Hub 2. The Hub Mini with Matter support costs £30 or kind of £27 with that 10% off, and then the Hub 2 costs around £60. With the Nuki smart locks, you don't actually need an external hub. That's because for the base model with Matter over Thread of the 4th gen, it basically uses something else in your home as your hub. So for me, that's my Apple HomePod Minis. Of course, if you get the Nuki 4th generation Pro model, it has built-in Wi-Fi, which means it also doesn't need a hub. Now you can use both of these locks without connecting to the internet, just via Bluetooth, but I think you get most out of it when you have got remote access. Now all in all, this does actually make the Switchbot lock slightly more affordable, especially if you've already got Switchbot products and a Hub 2 kicking around. It's also worth noting that Switchbot accessories are slightly cheaper as well. So if you take the Switchbot keypad with fingerprint scanner and NFC functionality, that costs just £99. The Nuki equivalent, which is the keypad 2, is £150 and doesn't have NFC compatibility. That means if you are going to factor in an external accessory, the Switchbot does suddenly get a lot cheaper. So let's talk about compatibility, and I will talk a little bit more about which cylinders they're compatible with. So both are compatible with Euro profile cylinders, UK oval cylinders, Swiss round cylinders, knob cylinders, and multi-point locks, including those with night latch mode. As I said, that's when you need the extra turn with the key from the outside, even when your door is unlocked. The thumb turn locks with both, you're going to need to make sure you got the right manufacturer of smart lock. 𝐤𝐤 is the most common one that is compatible with both. Switchbot include 8 different adapters with the lock itself, whereas Nuki will require you to order one for free. Or if you want it really quickly on something like Prime, they're about £2.50. Both also come with 2 mounting plates, and which one you use depends on how far your lock protrudes from your handle. If it protrudes by over 3mm, there's one where it just screws onto that protruding part. Otherwise, there's one that includes a sticky pad. Both sticky pads are 3M, which is great for making sure they stick really well, and Switchbot even throw in some extra adhesive, a wet wipe, and a spare sticky pad. Alongside that, Switchbot also throw in a contact sensor for you to get notifications when a door is left ajar, and also to allow auto locking. Nuki do sell an external contact sensor if you do want one of those. When it comes to compatibility, this makes both an excellent choice for people looking from the UK. So let's talk about design. If you go for the Pro model of the Nukis, you have a choice of white or black. Otherwise, it's just a choice of white for the base model. The Nuki has rounded edges and a nice rounded knob at the top. The body is largely made of plastic, but actually having used one of these for about a year, it's pretty robust and does look really nice. The Switchbot Lock Pro is metal and does actually feel more premium, especially when you hold it. It is also, as you can see, the larger of the two, and that may put some people off. I do think, however, with the black finish and rounded edges, it looks really smart. Both have buttons on and twist knobs as well. And with each of these, you can disable the functionality of these buttons or change that functionality in their respective apps. When it comes to design, which you prefer is going to be down to personal preference, but I personally prefer the Switchbot design even though it is a little bit larger. So let's talk about specification. So both 4th generation Nuki smart locks and the Switchbot Lock Pro support Matter. In order to use this, the Switchbot one requires a Hub 2 or the Switchbot Hub Mini with Matter support. The Nuki base model only requires something else in your home that can act as your home hub. So for me, that's a HomePod Mini. And of course, if you've got a Nuki Pro, it's got Wi-Fi built in, so you don't need to worry about that. Both also work with SmartThings and also Google Home. This means both work with Apple Home, but also SmartThings and Google Home. Switchbot also has Alexa support, which is coming soon to Nuki. And then Switchbot also has support for Home Assistant. Now when it comes to security, both make all of their digital communication securely via Bluetooth. Nuki uses end-to-end encryption and Switchbot uses 128-bit AES security. Both of these are as secure as your online banking. And then when it comes to the physical security, because you've still got your existing cylinder, the strength of your door is basically down to how good your cylinder is. This of course differs to things like the 𝐤𝐤𝐤𝐞 where you do replace all of your door hardware. And then when it comes to battery life, Nuki say from their rechargeable pack or from 4 AA batteries, you can get up to 6 months battery life. Switchbot on the other hand say 270 hours from 4 AA batteries, which is closer to 9 months. That means Switchbot have the edge when it comes to battery life, and they're also going to be bringing out a kind of interchangeable pair of battery packs which you can just switch one in and out all the time. And they say this will give you up to a year. This means the Switchbot certainly has the edge when it comes to battery life, but in terms of connectivity and the other functionality, I think they're pretty similar, especially for my use case as an Apple user, because that Matter functionality means both appear in my Apple Home app and I can operate it from in there. So what about fitting? There is basically no difference in the installation process between these two, other than the Switchbot one clips onto the mount and the Switchbot one screws in. The whole installation process will take most people less than 15 minutes, and they're very similar to each other. It's worth mentioning again that with Switchbot you do get that little door contact sensor in the box as well. If you want a Nuki one, Nuki do sell contact sensors separately. It's also worth noting a couple of other things. Firstly, for both of these locks you're going to need to have a cylinder that can be unlocked from the outside with a key whilst the key is on the inside. If you don't have one of these, you will need to get an extra cylinder, but the most affordable way around this is to actually buy a thumb turn cylinder instead. A 𝐤𝐤 one will cost around £20. And they of course neither look like a smart lock from the outside unless you use one of the external accessories. That's because all of the door hardware is on the inside. So let's talk about how you use them. So both smart locks can be used from the inside using the twist knob or the button. Both of these work really well for both. For the Switchbot you can choose if that button locks, unlocks or does the opposite to the current state. You can also disable that button and also set it to only trigger on 2 taps rather than 1. With the Nuki you can program 1 or 2 taps differently alongside being able to disable the button completely. It can also do the kind of opposite function, it can also lock, it can also unlock, and then it's got a lock and go feature. This means once you activate lock and go, you've got an amount of time you set in the app, so get out the house, pull your handle up and it will lock for you. Of course you can also use their respective apps, which also includes Apple Watch apps to lock and unlock from the inside or outside, or wherever you are. The same goes for using it with something like the Apple Home app on your phone or your watch or your Mac. With both, I found that they respond pretty quickly, although the Switchbot one does probably respond slightly quicker. Likewise, I do also prefer the interface of the Switchbot app. The Nuki Smart Lock also supports an auto unlock with geofencing feature. This is enabled in the Nuki app and means when you arrive, it can automatically unlock for you. There's also an experimental geolocation lock function in the app as well. This is just a lock when anyone leaves and gets out the geofence, not something like when the last person leaves. You can of course set up the kind of when the first person arrives and when the last person leaves in the Apple Home app if you want to. At the time of recording, the Switchbot app doesn't support any lock functionality via your geolocation. The geolocation function is in the Switchbot app and in beta mode, however you can't use the lock as something that activates based on your location. If you wanted to have some kind of geofencing with the Switchbot Lock Pro, you'd need to do this in something like the Apple Home app. As someone who uses their auto unlock and auto lock all the time, this gives the Nuki the edge for me. Both apps also support some auto lock features. Thanks to that included contact sensor, you can also get a notification if you leave the door ajar with the Switchbot. And then of course they both offer accessories that let you use things like key codes and fingerprints to get in. The Switchbot one also allows you to use NFC cards. And this brings us nicely to talk about guest access. So if you don't have an external accessory like a keypad, with the Switchbot the only way to give someone access is to give them access to your entire home using the Switchbot app. This is obviously not ideal. With the Nuki however, you can invite people to access certain locks. This is great if you've got multiple Nuki locks. This also supports some time limited access. So you could give people access every Monday between 12 and 2 PM. Of course this makes this functionality for the Nuki really useful. and also means whoever you're giving access to doesn't have to worry about having an extra accessory, they just use the Nuki app. If you do want to give people time limited access with the Switchbot, you are going to need that external accessory. But again, this is where it falls slightly short. And that's because whilst you can have time limited access with the Switchbot key codes or fingerprints, they're not kind of things that you can do between certain times of day. So with time limited access ones with Switchbot's external accessory, you could say that someone has access until 12 PM next week, or maybe has access for the next hour, but you couldn't say they have access every Monday between 12 and 2. In my opinion, this is a massive shortcoming of the Switchbot Lock Pro, but it's also something that could be fixed via software. And you can manage all of this remotely if you want to. With both apps, however, you can manage access and check the status of a lock and even trigger it remotely. Both offer some kind of login functionality as well, so you can see when it was accessed and by who. Especially if you're using things like fingerprints and key codes, you can keep tabs on which one has accessed your lock when. So how well do each of these smart locks work? And having used both of these, I find it very difficult to fault either. Both work well and respond quickly and are pretty reliable. The main thing I have noticed in testing the Switchbot and the Nuki at the same time, one on my back door, one on my front door, is that the Switchbot is noticeably quieter. And actually from the other side of the door, you can barely hear the Switchbot kicking in, but the Nuki you can hear. That's not to say the Nuki is loud and it's not something that bothers me, but it is worth noting. Especially as I know some people have commented on previous videos about how loud they think the Nuki is. Likewise, using both in the third-party app, so Apple's Home just works well as well. So all in all, which is the better of the two? In my review for the Switchbot Lock Pro, I said that Switchbot have nearly created my favourite smart lock. But my favourite is still the Nuki. However, I do think both have pros and cons. So let me break that down and talk about my perspective. And let's start with the Switchbot. So for me, the build quality of the Switchbot is superior. I love the metal finish and it does just feel like a pro product. I also think the design of it is more modern than the Nuki. The extended battery life is great to have as well. I've also found that it does seem to keep updated slightly better in the Apple Home app. And it can notify you in the Apple Home app if it gets jammed, which I haven't seen with the Nuki. The main downsides of the Switchbot Lock Pro are around that guest access. And what I'd like to see is some kind of update where you could give people access between certain times of day on kind of regular occasions. So if you had a cleaner who came every Monday at 10, they could have access between 10 and 12 on a Monday and that would just repeat. At the moment, you can't do that. That means if you use something like the keypad accessory with the Switchbot, it might be good if you've got an Airbnb because they can just have access for a week. But it's not really much good beyond that. And this is something that the Nuki has got right. So let's talk about the Nuki. And the Nuki is a great product. I have used their locks for over a year now, and they just work well. And I have very rarely had any issues with them. And actually for me, the only downside in terms of its compatibility is that it doesn't have Apple Home Key support. And the same goes for Switchbot. And the only retrofit smart lock that's come into market with that is the 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐞, which is coming out in June. What I would say is that having took the Nuki off my back door in order to put the Switchbot on and test it, I'd say the Switchbot does look nicer in my opinion. So which should you buy? If guest access isn't something that bothers you, then I'd actually say have a look at the Switchbot. And really that's just because of the build quality and the battery life, especially when it does come in at a lower price point, especially if you want to start buying extra accessories as well. So if you just wanted key codes with the Switchbot, you can get just a keypad scanner for 50 quid. If you do want guest access, especially for regular people like cleaners, then Nuki is definitely the go-to. And really, it's not much more expensive, especially for that base model. And if you see my kind of Nuki 4 compared to 4 Pro video, you'll know that there's really not much difference between the two, especially if you're an Apple user. If you guys have got any questions, do stick them below. There are links below to the Nuki website, the Switchbot website, and both products on Amazon as well if you want to pick them up. The Amazon and Switchbot links are affiliate links. If you use those, that just helps this channel out. There's also a voucher code for the Nuki website which will save you 10%. That code is valid till mid-May, and then I think will probably become valid later on in the year, and I'll update the comments accordingly. That voucher code is an affiliate code, so if you use that, that also helps me out as well. And of course, it saves you 10%. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys again soon.